This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with James Whiteman, the Managing Director of Guildford Borough Council, to talk about the voting and counting process in the forthcoming elections. James, thank you very much for giving your time to the Guildford Dragon today. I think a lot of people are obviously familiar with voting, but they don't always know what's going on behind the scenes about the process. So I thought it would be interesting to run through it with you. Thank you again for giving your time. So let's start off with the voting itself, the bit that people are familiar with. As a voter, you go into the polling station and you go to the table and the clerk asks for your name and checks it off against the electoral roll. What's he checking for there?
So, Martin, hello, nice to see you. All polling station staff are trained for each election as to the rules, and part of the training is checking that anyone attending the polling station is registered to vote. Their name and address will be verified even if they attend with a poll card. Okay,
and then they hand the voter a ballot paper, and the paper is numbered, isn't it? Why is it numbered? Because voting is meant to be anonymous.
So all ballot papers are numbered, so they are issued in sequence for each poll, and this makes the accounting process at the end easier.
Okay, and does it also mean that if it was detected that someone had voted in properly, you would be able to identify that ballot paper?
That's right.
Okay, so then the voter takes the ballot paper to the booth and makes a mark. Now, what kind of mark? Traditionally, we think it's going to be a cross, but does it have to be a cross?
No, it can accept a cross or a tick, or as long as the voter's intention is clear. We've seen smiley faces against the relevant candidate before, as long as it's clear who they're intending to vote for.
And then the voter folds the ballot paper and puts it into the ballot box. And what happens if the ballot box becomes full? How is that judged?
Well, it's quite primitive, really. I mean, it's just the box. They have a little piece of wood that they use to push down the slips into the box. If there's no more capacity in there, it indicates to the presiding officer that they need to change the box, and that's at that point they'll do that.
Okay, and I suppose the more elections that are taking place, because we have got in this case the PCC election and some by-elections and even a couple of parish council elections, I guess all that can add to the amount of ballot papers going into the same box.
That's right. I mean, we have just to recap, I'm sure that your readers know, Martin, but we have this election is quite complex, not just because it's in this COVID situation, but we have 10 Surrey County Council divisions, 3 borough by-elections, 2 parish council elections, and 3 neighbourhood planning referendums. So in somewhere like Send, for example, you're going to have people voting on all of those elections.
Right. Okay. And so in that circumstance, they might need more than one box to accommodate all the papers.
They may do, yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the COVID situation. Are there extra measures in place at the polling stations to cater for that?
Absolutely. I mean, a huge amount of emphasis has been made about making sure that voters and our staff and candidates are all safe in this process. So, as you would expect, there will be social distancing where we can. There will be exits and entry points. There will be space markings. There's obviously be hand gel. People will be required to wear masks within the polling station. There will be sneeze screens in front of the staff. The staff will be masked up. We'll ask that people would bring their own pens and pencils to make the vote, but we'll also have some available, but we'll be cleaning those. And there's a cleaning regime that's going to be happening through that process as well. And the same applies to the count as well.
So a lot of detailed preparation there you're describing.
Yeah, this is a really special election.
Yeah.
In terms of some of the controls we have to have in place, yes.
But of course, I'm guessing it's also important that people are considerate and when they go into a polling station, they use their common sense to keep social distance, etc.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm hoping, I mean, you see it every day, pretty much, people behaving in a considerate way in supermarkets and shops. And I hope they apply the same thing to the polling stations. But the staff will point it out, and yeah, I'm sure it will go very well. But yeah, we'll be making that clear.
Okay. And then at 10 p.m., voting closes, and anyone that's not already in the queue to get their ballot paper, they will no longer be able to vote. So it closes at 10. And then what happens inside the polling station?
Well, then it's they start unpacking the polling station and making sure that all of the papers and paraphernalia that's been used for the election for the voting is then packed away. The presiding officer will then load up the ballot boxes, and they will then be taken to the spectrum.
Okay, and the officers at the polling station, they will know, they'll have a record of how many ballot papers they've issued.
Yes, absolutely. And I just add as well, Martin, I mean, they monitor that throughout the day. There are also polling station inspectors that go out throughout the day, and they will do random checks to check that the tickets are being administered in the correct way.
Okay, and the ballot boxes are sealed?
Yes, that's right.
And then transported to the count. How's that done?
So that's done in their cars. The presiding officers will then, from all the different polling stations across the area, take them all to the spectrum. The spectrum staff are excellent at this, and our own teams as well. So they will receive each presiding officer as they come in, and they are then processed through an arrangement in the counting hall, where we mark off the polling station and all the relevant paperwork and the ballot boxes, etc., and all the paraphernalia. It's all taken off the presiding officer. They've had a really long day, and then the counting staff will work on Thursday night, usually quite late, just making sure that everything's packed away, stowed away, ready for the next day of the counting.
Okay, so then that's when the count starts, the first thing I believe they do is to check the number of ballots against the expected number recorded by the presiding officer. That's
right. And so the boxes will be opened at the start of the verification process in front of candidates, agents, and any appointed observers. And the postal votes are accounted for in separate boxes and transported to the count from the postal vote opening centres. So that's all happens at that point. Okay, and once that's done and the verification is carried out, then the count, as most people imagine it, i.e. the amount of votes against each candidate, they're sorted out into the piles and then counted up. Is that correct? That's correct, yes. Yeah. And as an observer, I've seen that they put them into bundles on the tables. And this is where I think some, especially the old hands amongst the party political attendees, they can often see how the vote's going from quite an early stage, and you can see the smiles or the sullen faces emerge. Yeah, they take a very keen interest. It's going to be slightly harder this year for them. I mean, they're going to have absolute views of the tickets, but they can't crowd round the counters quite in the way they have in the past, right, obviously because of the COVID situation. And again, we're going to have screens between them and the counters, transparent screens. I don't want anybody, thinking we're not being transparent. We absolutely are. But they won't be able to get quite as close as they may have tried to do previously. No, because it is indoors, and you obviously want to protect those people that are in a static position doing the counting. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we'll have ventilation in there, and we'll have distance again. So, I mean, Elaine and the team, just amazing planning to make this happen. And it will be safe, but yeah, a lot of extra work. Yeah. Okay. Now, during the count, they may come across doubtful or spoiled ballots. What's the process there? Well, when the counters are going through the tickets, these doubtful papers will present themselves. If somebody unfortunately has put personal markings on there or details, or it's not clear who they're voting for, I have to say we've seen some rather unusual and colourful artwork in the past, Martin, as well, those tickets. And we then take those to Doubtful Corner, and I ask all the candidates and agents to come along, and they're consulted on those doubtful papers by the returning officer, myself or my appointed deputy, and they will make the final decision. And normally all of the candidates and agents agree with us on that. It's normally pretty obvious, and it's done in very good humour and appropriately. So
okay. So do you save those up towards the end of the count, or is it done as they come across them?
We tend to do it towards the end,
Right.
and we've tried to make it slightly clearer by having Doubtful Corner part of the hall, and I use a microphone throughout the process and make it very clear, giving a sort of running commentary of where we are. The frustration sometimes can be that people don't know where you are in the process, whether it's verification or counting or whatever, but we've really worked on that over the last 2 years, I think, and tried to really make sure that people know where we are in the process, which I think has helped. I mean, I would say this count is going to take as long as it takes, and we've got slightly less staff counting, and people have to be patient with us, and we've got slightly less staff because we've had to accommodate the spacing. So people will just have to be patient. I mean, the candidates and agents have been great so far. We have a meeting again tonight with them, and they just have to bear with us. We will get through it, but it'll there's a lot to do.
Yes, and more precautions than normal to take, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so once all that's done, you've got a result. What do you, once you know the result yourself as the returning officer, what do you do?
I then will ask the candidates and agents. They'll be consulted on the results, and if it's appropriate, it allows them the opportunity to request a recount. We don't have a set figure of, as we go into the process, say, well, if it's this kind of gap, that's where a recount will happen. The circumstance itself will probably generate that discussion, and then we'll talk it through with them. And if necessary, we will then do that, whether it's a bundle check or a full recount, we'll discuss with the candidates and do accordingly.
Okay, and the result that's given to the agents, and you've said that to give them a chance to ask for a recount. A recount, is it of every individual vote?
It could be, or it could just be a bundle count for that relevant part. It really depends on the kind of circumstance that we're talking about, in terms of, if it's between one vote, it might be, there might be a requirement to unpack it all and have another look, but we'll play that as we need to on the night, really.
I see. I mean, if it's very close, you might have to go down, but if it's less close, I guess the chances are you might only need to do a bundle one, right. But you decide it on the night. Okay, and then presumably that's when you ask the candidates to come to the podium and make your announcement.
Indeed, yeah, and then the results are announced at a local level by the returning officer, but for the police and crime commissioner, the role of returning officer is known as the PARO, which is, I have to check my name because I always forget it. It's the parliamentary, no, what is it, Elaine? It's the Police and Crime Commission Area Returning Officer, the PARO. And that the person who's in that role is Paul Turrell, who is the chief executive at Runnymede. So all the districts and boroughs will relay our results that we've counted to him, and then he will make the arrangement there.
Okay, so that announcement won't be made in Guildford, it'll be made centrally.
That's right.
Okay.
And then once he's done that, Martin, then he will say to us that we can tell the people in the hall what the regional result, the local result was.
Okay, and also, I mean, it's not part of the official process, but you normally, I think the council posts the result on the website as well, on your website.
Yes, we'll do that certainly for our borough election, and we'll work with Surrey and with Paul Turrell in relation to the others. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, it strikes me that this is a really quite an old-fashioned process, a heavily manual process, and I don't suppose it's changed that much for some decades. But do you think that, given what we've seen in the presidential election, the last presidential election in America, there are some advantages to that process, the manual one?
I think you're talking to a managing director that's, overseen a large transformation project where we've put a lot of self-service and digitalize a lot of work that we're doing. And I can see the benefits of doing that with lots of different processes. And I guess with the voting in America, you can see that probably there were some real advantages, but there were doubts over the decisions that were made, and people were able to suggest doubt. And I think this is, whilst it is quite a manually, as you say, a manually heavy process, I think it does add reassurance to people. And I think for that very reason, that's probably why we haven't moved to any other versions of it.
Yeah, I mean, no one could complain that the computer had got it wrong when there's no computer, or the counting machine when there's no counting machine.
No.
So
Exactly.
Some old-fashioned things can still be good, even in this digital.
Well, indeed, and it's what's wonderful. I always think what's wonderful is that we see the vote, especially on count day and on the election day. You go around the polling stations and then you go have the count, and the staff that come in are local people who feel very passionately about democracy and they want to be involved in it. And they're often, they're neighbors, friends of friends, all that kind of thing, and ex-staff, and they all come in and do it. And they're all totally committed to the process of being involved in an election. And it's great. And it's a really lovely sort of great camaraderie and a great sense of achievement when we finished it.
Yeah, well, I've observed several counts, as you know, James, and I would definitely back that up. I think it's done very properly, but with good humour and the right spirit, and where everyone has a respect for the democratic process.
Yes, yeah, no, it's really good to see, isn't it? But I'm also blessed by a fantastic team as well. I just make that point again. They are fantastic. So it's a really hard job. It's really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, once again, James, thank you very much for giving us your time, and I hope that informs those that want to know a bit more about the process. And good luck for the count going well next week.
No, thank you very much, and we'll see you there.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.